The border to Canada is closed. Well, sort of. Ottawa has banned all foreign nationals except for Americans, but admitted they will not stop the illegal border crossings happening at Roxham Road. To talk more about it is political reporter Brian Lilley, joining me once again from Toronto. Brian, between October and December of 2019, the Immigration and Refugee Board of Canada said there was an intake of almost 4,100 refugee claims from people attempting to cross into Canada irregularly. Some of those may
Yeah,
be infected with COVID-19.
and we don't know. In January, there were 1,100. We expect similar numbers from February. At that point, the virus had spread well outside of Wuhan in China, the original epicenter, and started going elsewhere. I guess when it comes to Roxham Road, which when I heard the border would be closed, I thought, okay, well, they're going to close this because the Prime Minister's initial announcement was we're going to close the border. Big surprise. I didn't expect him to go that far. Big surprise there. But he said it will be closed with the exception of Americans and flight crews coming in or people that are driving trucks across the border for supplies, things like that. Those were the only exceptions, or close family members of permanent residents and citizens, like a spouse or a kid could come in. But to find out that we could be bringing in 1,000 people a month or more still at Roxham Road, where we don't know if they're sick. I thought the government would say no to that. Instead, what they did was double down and said, yes, but don't worry. We're now giving them more medical screening and we're going to put them up for 14 days. We're going to house them for 14 days so that we can check them out, make sure that they're in quarantine. I'm not sure that this is what people were expecting when they heard the government said the border would close.
Brian, Alberta Premier Jason Kenney has announced about $60 million to help combat COVID-19 here in the province. And Prime Minister Justin Trudeau says emergency financial measures are also on the way from Ottawa.
Yeah, the federal government is sprinkling money around to all the provinces. They've already announced 200 million for Ontario, and the Ontario government's putting in money, and of course Alberta, British Columbia, Ontario, I believe Quebec as well. All these provinces declaring states of emergency as their numbers go up. It's going to be, Premier Doug Ford has said no expense will be spared. It's going to be a massive bill for each and every one of the provinces and the federal governments. Then you look at the massive bills that businesses are going to have, employers will have, that each of us will have. Because while you and I are able to work and need to keep working, Hal, so that we can inform people of what's going on, an awful lot of people are just flat out broke. They're going to be flat out broke. They're going to be out of luck. I was speaking with one guy who owns a restaurant, and on Monday night, when they said they went from saying, no, nothing over 250 people down to nothing over 50 people, and bars and restaurants have to close. This restaurant owner had to lay off his staff, a number of wait staff up front, a number of cooks and busboys and dishwashers in the back, people that aren't making a ton of money to begin with, and now they're wondering where rent's going to come from. The government promising a lot of support. We'll see how fast they can get it out. Will we end up seeing the Prime Minister or any of the premiers being as definitive as Donald Trump and saying, I want checks in Americans' hands now? That's what Trump was saying earlier this week.
You know, I'm really worried about my kids as well who live in Southern Ontario. My daughter works at a restaurant as a line cook. You know, she's concerned about being laid off. My son works in IT. Similar situation there. And here in southwestern Alberta, same story. Restaurants are closing. Seems like the only establishments really thriving at this point in time are the grocery stores. You know, when you go to the grocery stores, you go down the bread aisle. It's been cleaned out. The meat aisle, you know, there's not a lot left. It's just amazing
Yeah.
what's happening right now because of COVID-19. But Brian, thousands of federal workers are about to receive paid vacation since they cannot work.
Yes, and this is, I guess, part of the contract, part of the way that the government works. And I'm not going to begrudge it to them. I just wish that everyone could be in that position. And the federal workers, like most civil servants, need to remember how lucky they are in this sort of situation, because there's going to be an awful lot of people who don't have that option. You know, the restaurant owner that I was mentioning who laid off his staff, part of the reason he laid them off, one, no money coming in, he can't keep paying them, or he can't keep paying them very long. Secondly, it allows them to get employment insurance. And so that's a good thing that the federal government has done for the rest of us that aren't civil servants is if we get laid off or if we have to take sick leave, they're starting to speed up the measures for that. So 1 week waiting period waived. You don't need to wait 1 week or 2 weeks, depending on where you live, for EI or sick leave anymore. You can apply right away. The problem is, depending on your income, you might only be seeing a little less than $500 a week. And if you were making a lot more than that, if you were making what the average Canadian is, of about $55,000 a year, that's a big hit. If you're making even more than that, that's a bigger hit. So, I think that we're going to have to see in this aid package, in these measures the government's bringing forward, the ability, or at least using the bully pulpit, to call on credit card companies, banks, mortgage companies to say, everyone hold off, everyone's going to get paid, everyone's going to get there, but we all need to have a little bit of understanding at this time.
Brian, let me ask you something. Are you seeing a lot of panic buying and people maybe hoarding some of the groceries in southern Ontario, like we're seeing here in southwestern Alberta?
Well, so I live in the middle of downtown Toronto, and surprisingly have a number of quality grocery stores. In fact, I'm regularly at the Loblaws that's in the old Maple Leaf Gardens. People love hearing about that one because it's where the Leafs played for so long. But the first several days of this, as they started talking about self-isolation and social distancing, there wasn't much in the way of panic buying. Then the toilet paper thing started, and that was it for a while. And then I was in my local grocery store last Thursday afternoon, just after the NBA had been canceled, after Sophie Trudeau had been announced that she had it, Tom Hanks had announced he had it. All of a sudden, people went, wow, they're canceling sports leagues, they're canceling the NHL. Famous people have this. This is real. And I'm there at 5:30 in the afternoon, and I thought, well, it's a little busier than usual. Maybe a lot of people are stopping in after work to grab something for dinner. And then I saw the lines, Hal, and I saw that the canned goods aisle was picked over, the toilet paper was picked over, the cleaning supplies, unless it said organic, there was lots of that. But people just wanted the harshest disinfectant they could find, and they cleaned the grocery stores out of that. We're almost a week later, and I'm still seeing the meat aisle empty, toilet paper aisle empty, and a lot of other material. It comes in and it goes out quickly.
Brian, experts are saying there's no need to actually panic over our food supply. Tell me more.
Yeah, so the Retail Council of Canada, among others, has been in regular contact with governments across the country, provincial and federal, even local governments at times, saying, look, we know what's happening, and we know it's happening across the country. This is not a Toronto thing, by the way, because when I put it out on Twitter about the panic buying, I heard from people straight across the country, and I saw photo evidence from Calgary, Vancouver, everywhere. And so the experts have had to come out and say, look, we have the food available. We understand that there is a bit of an apprehension right now. There's some anxiety, but the food supply exists. Kruger, which is the company behind Scotty's bathroom tissue, the Scotty's Tournament of Hearts, that were it still on, we couldn't go watch it. They have come out with a statement. They're the biggest maker of toilet paper in Canada, saying there is enough supply. So that's part of why we've all got to calm down on the panic buying. We've seen governments at all levels implore people, just buy what you need. The supply will be there. But right now, as I said, it's being whipped out the door as fast as it hits the shelves for some types of products. And, that's it's putting a strain on the just-in-time delivery system. I will say this, though. I did see a lot of fresh produce at my most recent trip to the grocery stores. I had a few of them. Potatoes, those are in short supply. But fresh produce is there still. And that's good. And that's part of why we still need the border with the Americans open. Maybe we can close it for tourists. Maybe we can close it for Roxham Road. But we still need it there for the trade, for the supply chain. Whether we're talking about manufacturing plants that are still open, or at this time of year, especially when most of us are still in winter, we need that food supply. And if we close off the American border completely, we're going to be going hungry very quickly.
Brian, the maker of ventilators, says Canada should have stockpiled the machines after SARS in '03.
Yeah, this is a company called Aeron, and they came out with the statement saying, well, why didn't you stockpile them? They called it very frustrating that countries don't have these machines on hand. Well, you think you've got enough of a machine, and you think you've got an extra supply, and then along comes a pandemic that nobody saw. So I think this is a bit of a tone-deaf move for the company and for their CEO to be making statements like this. I don't think that they're trying to hoard them. I think there is an incredible global demand that is going to far exceed supply for the foreseeable future, and he's going to make his money. I get that he figures that countries should be better prepared, but can you prepare for a pandemic like this? Not if you don't see it coming. Even if you did, you might not see the scale of entire countries shutting down the way Italy has, or large sections of countries like Hubei province in China, where Wuhan is a city of 11 million people. You don't expect that sort of thing to happen. You don't expect to have it happen so quickly, and for it to be so severe. So even with planning, even with extra buying, we'd still be worried and trying to ramp up. I've heard some marketing gurus say online, how you treat your employees is how you will your company will be remembered at the end of this. Well, I have to add to that, companies like this are going to be remembered for cold, crass statements, and it's not going to sit well with the public.
So, Brian, Alberta has declared that a state of emergency. Ontario has as well. Here it means that the government does not want to see gatherings of 50 or more people at a time. And we're talking about bars, bingo halls, even churches may not survive.
The entire landscape, depending on how long this lasts, how the entire landscape of our country, of our individual communities, could look vastly different at the end of this. The Catholic churches across the country declared no mass on the weekend. As someone who's been going to mass my entire life, I never recall hearing "do not go," that you can't go at all. There have been different, rituals that have changed, such as don't touch each other, don't shake hands at the sign of peace, things like that that have happened during SARS, or they've even adapted that over flu season, and come up with different protocols, but never cancel church completely. And now you're going to have, you can have small Bible study groups, but you can't, there's not too many churches that have fewer than 50 people showing up. So it's going to be very difficult for faith communities. It's going to be difficult for the small businesses. Even a lot of large businesses are going to be in trouble. I was hearing Lufthansa has already gone to the German government and said, look, we're in trouble. You have to bail us out or we'll be bankrupt. How long can WestJet and Air Canada survive when the airports are empty? This is having a massive, massive operation, massive change is being brought about as a result of this, these states of emergency, and people acting properly. I'm not saying that we should be going out and doing the things we normally do. We shouldn't, but it is going to have make a massive difference in our lives going forward.
What we've seen here in southwestern Alberta as well, Brian, when it comes to churches in either mass or services, they're streaming. They're live streaming a lot now. That's when people are watching the services online. And then the people who are actually going to church, like you said, keeping the social distance, a meter, 3 feet apart, and people are bowing. I kind of like what Asians are doing now too, instead of shaking hands or hugging, right?
And just the other night, I saw Alberta's own Brett Kissel decide he can't go out on tour, he can't entertain his fans, so he was doing it on Instagram, doing a home concert and chatting with his fans as he did it.
Wow, we live in different times in a different world right now. Toronto Sun journalist Brian Lilley, thanks again for your time today.
Thank you.